put my money where my mouth is, turning all my units into Airbnb, and we expect double the returns, to be real candid and straightforward, based on the numbers we're seeing. So is Airbnb profitable in 2022? Yes, it is the most profitable rental business model in Des Moines, Iowa. Like, I haven't met anyone that hasn't succeeded at it. Like, hands down, nobody that I know has ran an Airbnb and said, well, it's too expensive, I'd rather long-term rent my property. And because of that, I reached out to a few friends, few business partners, a few clients, quite frankly, and said, hey, what would it look like if we ran an Airbnb property management business together? And knowing these clients, it was a pretty, 2 or 3 days before we all got together and like hatched it out. But their operations like gurus, I'm the idea person, right? And so to me, the numbers work. And we got together, put a business plan together. And so October 1st, we're rolling out Airbnb property management. What that's going to mean is essentially anyone, whether you're a client of mine or not, you have the option to hire someone to run your property as Airbnb. Whether that means they do, they just take it over. So think of long-term rental, and now it's Airbnb. The percentage payout is the kind of kicker, and everyone gets really caught in, well, it's X percent, it's really high percent compared to long-term property management, but you're turning over the unit 2 or 3 times a week. And you have to hire cleaners. You have to deal with, 180 different tenants throughout the entire 360-day calendar. So what we've done is we put together platforms that talk to each other, APIs that talk. We put together lists and lists of cleaners, contractors, processes in place so that an owner can hire us to be their property managers, and likely probably 1.5 to 2 times their rental income compared to long-term rent. And if you're talking to investors, when you tell them, well, instead of $700 a month you're going to make on a rental, you could make $1,400, and you don't have to do any of the property management, and you have someone in there cleaning once or twice a week, you have repairs done as tenants move out, which is obviously weekly, it's very attractive to investors, which is why when we started this business, I'm putting every single one of my properties that I have turnover. So renewals come up, I'm turning them into short-term rentals. It only makes sense from what we're seeing in the numbers today. And we pull from software that looks at all rentals in the area. One thing about short-term rentals is it's much, much more high-tech than the long-term rental business is. Long-term rental, there's not one source of all statistics. It's really tough to figure out what the average rent is in a zip code. Short-term rentals, it's really freaking easy because everybody has their property on Airbnb. And there are softwares like called Hostaway that connects to Airbnb, and it sees how many days a month each property that's listed on Airbnb is vacant. What they're getting on average per month. So Hostaway can pull all that data out of Airbnb, and they can basically spit it to a new property owner and say, if your property looks like this in this zip code in this area, you're going to get on average this return. So it's actually a more technical and scientific way to figure out the return that you're going to get, as opposed to long-term rental where you are looking at Zillow rents, you're looking at apartments.com rents, where else? Facebook Marketplace, those type of places to figure out what long-term rents are. If you do short-term rent, you have a significant kind of headwind or lack of headwind when it comes to trying to figure out the price or numbers that you're going to make. The downside is you have city government and politics in place. So it's very possible for a city just to say, no more Airbnb. Now, in Iowa, it's passed a law that says no city can say no short-term rentals allowed. Literally a law. But cities can get around that by making different rental certification rules and requirements. So you can still have politics in there, even though the legislatures in Iowa have said no banning Airbnbs or short-term rentals. So we're starting an Airbnb business, property management business. Put my money where my mouth is, turning all my units into Airbnb, and we expect double the returns, to be real candid and straightforward, based on the numbers we're seeing. So we will continue to update everybody on how this process is going, and soon I'm sure you'll get an email or you'll hear about Airbnb property management. And if you're interested in figuring out what your property would rent for on Airbnb and what those numbers look like, we have a quick, really cool Excel spreadsheet that you can type in what your costs are, and we can give you estimates on what different companies estimate your property to get, so that you can see, okay, my long-term rent is $850, and if I short-term rented it, my net rent, not gross, my net number, like comparative to long-term rent, is going to be $1,600. And then you get to decide, what do I want to do? Do I want a long-term rent or short-term rent?